Okay.
We are aiming to do for at least 20 countries climate action. Yeah, that's your friend. Here, huh? Where are your speakers? Where's EK? EK? Yeah, he's on the way. Leo? Both I'm coordinating. Okay. They're on their way. Both are the negotiators for their respective countries. They have to come out of the negotiations. But they have.
Okay. Okay. Well, we can make it shorter. I can make it a bit shorter. They don't come. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. If you'd like to take your seat, we're about to begin. So, the title of this session, thank you everybody for joining, is The Big Debate, the Future of CGIAR Partnerships for Climate Services. It is not the title above there. Vanessa wouldn't let me update it. But that was the old title. But it's the same concept. I was being quite provocative. And our colleagues are pushing us to be as provocative as possible, and that was my original attempt. So so we're going to discuss today the many partnerships that are existing across the CGIAR partnership to develop and scale climate services that work for smallholder farmers. And we're going to have an innovative format today. We're going to do an Oxford-style debate. So that'll come later, so we can look forward to that. But to begin with, I'd like to hand over to my colleague Todd, who's the director of CGIAR Climate Action, to give us a few welcome remarks and to talk about the new program and one of our areas of work in this space. Thank you, Todd.
Sure. I'll keep it very short. Everybody's talking about climate services. Everybody's talking big numbers. We're going to change the world with climate services. We're going to change the world with early warning systems. But those systems are not built on, are not able to be generated without the enabling environment. And so it's really this enabling environment we're here to debate. So in some places, this enabling environment already exists. In some places, people are just starting to create it. And so now here today, we'll be talking about that big debate that Reese has already mentioned, that debate on what's necessary and what's sufficient to enable this upscaling of climate information. I'll hand it back to Giraj.
Yeah, thank you very much, Todd. So I'd like to welcome my colleague Giraj, who's going to give us a presentation to kind of do a whirlwind tour around the world to tell us the different stories about how climate services are working and making a difference. So thank you, Giraj. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Reese, and thank you, Todd. This is a couple of authors involved in drafting this presentation on why National Framework for Climate Services is important. Some of you might recall a disaster happened in countries like Bangladesh in 1988, where there was no access to climate services was there. We had over 300,000 to 500,000 people have lost their life because of not having a timely information on climate services. And today we have come a long way because of thanks to the National Framework for Climate. Today, if every cyclone happens in any part of the Indian Ocean, only there is a loss of life, 1 or 2 people. The exposure is still there because we do not have adequate infrastructure. So I would say that National Framework for Climate Services is very, very critical, which is the critical area for risk management going forward. So what it is a National Framework for Climate Services? If you are learning or listening for the first time, please join us. You will be able to learn many good things, right? So one is it's a country level mechanism. It's very, very important that the policymaker strategic investment goes into the investments in national framework. And it is one of the important area where the science is linked into multi-sectoral process. where we are talking about climate services is not just about agriculture, health, disaster risk reduction, water sector, and it's a fundamentally the framework is very, very important. And it is not just a national process, it's a global process as well. WMO led this entire process for many years, and now governments and countries are picking up this important process. Now, why this is all started at the WMO and the importance of WMO Secretariat is the rising climate change impact. We don't know when the disasters are going to strike, and without knowing when and where, the hyper localized climate services, only this framework can offer that. The second point is that, as I said, it is going to bring cross sector coordination. How can the agriculture, health department, water sector, disaster management can work together building on this national framework for climate services process. Thirdly, you are here in COP30. It's about the NDC's National Adaptation Plan. Climate services are again the fundamental blocks to strengthen the framework of national adaptation plan going forward. And there are many countries are investing specific focus to X billion dollar in national framework for climate services. I'm going to talk about examples from a few countries here. Now, as per our analysis from WMO, over 71 countries have already engaged in the national framework for the year like 2024. Might be more numbers would have added. And 20 plus countries are already implementing. There is a policy aspect. The framework have gone into national to local level, and many are still in the early stage. You are going to see some examples who are in early stage in the region wise. So when I talk about Africa, they are doing amazing work with the number of investments coming from ICRA, funded by World Bank. As I said, climate services it's a leapfrog when it comes to looking at agriculture modernization, climate smart agriculture, knowing when to utilize the climate services for fertilizer application, what type of seed varieties I need to procure. So we have, I would say that there are lot of potential and opportunities from countries we can learn from Africa. One of the example recently was the government of Zambia launched the national framework, but it looks at both the weather, water, and climate services, right? It's integrated thinking is happening. It was launched by the minister from the green economy. And what we are seeing is three things. One is a very well coordinated approach from the Zambia Meteorological Department with all the lines, sectoral institution. Second, we are embedding in many of the ongoing national programs like National Framework for Climate Smart Agriculture, Climate Smart Investment is happening on that. Now look at the example like Senegal. There is ANASIM is the meteorological agency. They are looking at whole value chain of disseminating this data through mobile apps, through farmer extension, looking at disaster management organization. So we see a diverse portfolio of how Met agencies are taking an advanced step in terms of disseminating this information. The India has launched it officially, the National Framework for Climate Services in 2024, and they have clearly identified 5 target priority sectors. But there are other countries like Nepal, Bangladesh, Pakistan are in the very early stage, and they are using specifically for improving the sub-seasonal forecast for sectoral monitoring going forward. This is another good example from Guatemala. They came with a detailed process in terms of co-designing this process with all the actors. Now they have conducted a deep dive into the workshop with all the agencies. Now they are looking at the NFCS, what is the cost investment they need going forward in the next few years. Second, they would have to come up with the strategic plans that what is the role of private sector, what is the role of ministries like agriculture department, health department. So it's a good example of what Guatemala is doing again. In terms of wrapping up, what we can learn in all this process is better exchange of ministry departments is happening very well with the, but again, I would say there is in terms of improving their observation networks have to be increased a lot more. Secondly, there is also need for more investment has to come. That's my focus of this particular slide. While I have shown about few regional perspective, one of the challenges we see is the limited funding, So how much really the funds are really available for NFCS? Not many countries do not have a lot of funds. Secondly, it has to go into a lot more user engagement process. Thirdly, there is a need for data infrastructure. We talk about a lot more. Now, aim for scale is here. They are looking at building countries to have robust infrastructure, bringing up all the data that got lost, because modern days we do have automatic weather station. In the past, it used to be a paper form of data. Now you need to digitalize that data to update your national adaptation plan. So there are few countries. So when I just look at this plan for Kenya, roughly about $29 billion they are looking for investments in $1 million, not $1 billion, $29 million in governance and operational structure. If you look at climate information product, they have in the plan roughly about $5 million they are requesting, and priority infrastructure about 5 million, right? So one country we are talking about investment readiness is required over $50 million investment, which is really missing in many part of the region. My last slide is future direction, what we need to go ahead, while Anna Maria is going to counter more about the bad side of the NFCS. But I would say that we need more, countries need to secure more funding, because they do have strategies and plan for NFCS, but without funding, it's not going far. We also need a user-centered approach, upgrading their early warning infrastructure. Thirdly, we also need to really monitor $1 investment in climate services. There is a lot of cost benefit analysis have been evaluated. So we are really looking forward to more donors like Gates Foundation or aim to World Bank and many others have to invest in more NFCS as they go forward. So I'll stop here, passing on to Reese. I hope I have convinced sufficient enough that we will have a checkbook from Deutsche Bank with $100 million investment at the end of this day. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Giriraj, for the presentation. A bit of background. So now we're going to move to the debate. And perhaps actually, Giriraj, if you want to come back up, so you need to make the case. So the proposition, so now we're moving to the Oxford debate. So the proposition and national frameworks for climate services have achieved their full potential. Okay? And we're going to hear a motion for and a motion against. And I'm going to open up to the audience to then vote who you, do you agree with the motion for or motion against? Okay, so Giriraj, you have to come back up now, and you have a couple of minutes to convince the audience that national frameworks for climate services have reached their potential.
See, while I have spoken more on the positive side of the NFCS, I would still highlight 3 areas where we see there is a significant improvement I could talk about. Specifically, I see compared to 1990s or early 2000, there is a lack of coordination because people may not have reliability of the forecast skills. Now, with the advancement in artificial intelligence and upgradation of the data, people largely rely on the seasonal forecast and sub-seasonal forecast. There is a lot of report from Deloitte, MNC, and many other group have told a country like India, they have made a net benefit of over crop production, over 20% better income for the farmers because of access to climate data. The second point I would say is more about access to data. Now we have communication satellite, which are helping farmers to reach access to data in their mobile phone. They are able to make in a more multilingual, lingual perspective of translating this data in a local language in terms of when to schedule the crop, when to do that. So I would say that's a second area where a lot of progress have happened in terms of reaching the last mile. Third point, I would say that there is a lot of socioeconomic benefit. People are understanding the value of climate services. Just take about disaster management. If we can evacuate people well in advance, knowing the forecast skills are good, you can save the life and livelihood, and you can also build resilient infrastructure going forward. So these are the 3 things I would say how we see that motion for NFCS is strongly embedded in our ideas.
Okay, thank you very much, Giriraj. So there's the 3 points to keep in your mind. Now we're going to hear from Ana Maria Lobo Guerrero of the Gates Foundation, who's going to argue against the motion.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation. So let me start with a caveat, and it's that national frameworks for climate services are different. They are not the same, and Giriraj did a really good job in terms of presenting those countries that are doing a wonderful job. It's not the same case for all countries. So I'm going to provide 4 points on why I think that we need to rethink national frameworks for climate services, but these are high level, and again, emphasizing that some countries are doing a really good job. So my first point, how this is very similar of the way that you feel when you go out for dinner and then you go to these really nice restaurants and you are hungry and you eat a lot, perhaps more than you should have. And then you feel very heavy after that. And that's somehow the feeling that I get from some of these processes. They're very heavy. They are slow, I would argue. They are somehow bureaucratic, cumbersome, and I would suggest out of date. And in many cases, what you have seen is that countries have started these processes and they have stopped because they don't see the value, they don't see the benefits, they don't have the capabilities, or just they have different frameworks that respond better to their needs. So that's my first point. My second point is that we all are very aware that we are living, especially this year, and it's not going to change soon, in a world where resources are very much constrained. And there are many initiatives that are similar to this. And if I would be in the government of any of these countries, I would say, well, how do I prioritize? Do I put more efforts on the soft process? Do I invest more on the early warnings for all systems? Do I try to get funding from crew? So many things that governments need to navigate. And to tell you the truth, I haven't seen a strong assessment that says that engaging in one of these national framework for climate services processes it's going to get governments more funding for being successful in climate services and reaching farmers, for instance. My second point, it's a little bit of my third, sorry, it's a cost-benefit analysis point. And in here, it's a very similar to the previous one. I haven't seen an assessment that says that countries that have these kind of processes are doing better in terms of coordination, in terms of collaboration for deploying climate services. And I just wonder, I believe in the notion, in the logic of this. I think that countries need to have a national framework that it's adjusted to their needs, but somehow I feel that the cost of it in terms of the time, and you didn't mention how long these processes have taken, somehow it's relevant compared the cost to the benefits. And then my last point, it builds on my first one. I believe that these processes are slow in general. And if you think about private sector advancements, AI, forecasting models, geospatial data, a national framework for climate services cannot, even if the processes want to be as quick as these processes. These things are going really, really fast. AI, I don't see these going as fast. And I would just finish by saying, I think that these processes need to be very agile. They need to be iterative. They need to be quick. And they need to be demand responsive. That's it.
I was being too slow with my microphone there. It's okay, so too slow, too heavy, not enough benefits to the costs, not adaptive enough to a changing world, to a changing reality. So now we're going to open it to the floor, to the audience. So national frameworks for climate services have reached their potential. Raise your hands in the air if you agree with that motion. 2. Okay. Those who don't agree with that statement, raise your hands in the air. If you agree with Ana Maria. Okay, we have 5, 6, 6. Okay, so I'm afraid, Geraraj, you've lost the debate, and Ana Maria wins. Okay, so thank you for that. Okay, so now we're going to open it to a panel, which Geraraj will kindly lead for us. So I'd like to welcome back Ana Maria to the panel. And then, Marcus Muller from Deutsche Bank, if you'd like to join us, thank you very much. And then we have 2 colleagues, Mr. VK Singh. VK Singh, if you'd like to join us, thank you. VK Singh is from the Indian Council of Agricultural Research. So I'll hand over to you, Giriraj, to ask some questions. And you need a microphone.
I think still Anna Maria has more time to be positive side of that to convince more people. Let's debate with more moderation. We need, yeah, you have the mic. Let me start with Anna Maria because you talked about a lot more challenges in terms of the kind of problem statement you defined in terms of access to data, how quick they could be. There is a lot of coordination issues and all. One of the limitations we want to see is for accelerating the NFCS is all about investment. Now, how can we help countries to prioritize because they go to adaptation fund or GCF? It's a very long process to get into an investment of 20 to 30 million on NFCS. So what should be your message for mobilizing and also the role of philanthropic foundation as well?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question, Giriraj. So I think that philanthropy has a very specific role to play in here in terms of being catalytic and something that I have learned from my 15 months working for the Gates Foundation is that even though there's so many interesting opportunities for financing in terms of projects that you see future that can benefit communities in terms of bringing climate information, the idea is that this needs to be catalytic in the sense that we are addressing issues that perhaps governments cannot address, the private sector cannot address, and therefore we are creating markets where markets do not exist with the aim of reaching scaling. So something that I want to emphasize is that even though the Gates Foundation is very much focused on delivering and accelerating innovation, and we are working a lot on AI,
Yeah.
the the institutional structure of climate services, it's important. It is very, very important. But we need to do it in a way that it's agile, as I was just mentioning. And we need to make sure that the capacities are in these different organizations at different levels. And this is why we are so excited to work with ACMAT, because we believe that at the regional level, there's huge potential to interact more with the national climate services to go all the way into the farmers. I think that institutional infrastructure is not in place. And I know that you asked me about investments, Kiriraj. I don't think that the challenge is money in this case.
Right.
Of course, we could do more things with money. I think that we are not addressing the root causes of the problem. And a lot of those root causes is that the institutionalization of how to deliver climate information so that it can be actionable is not there, especially in Africa. I'm talking mostly about Africa. So I deviated a little bit from your question,
yeah.
but I believe that this is important.
Yeah, we'll come back to you. So let me go to our colleague Muller in Deutsche Bank. That was when I joined in Germany in 2006. My first account I opened was Deutsche Bank, right? So what signals do you think that the government have to put forward in catalyzing private sector financing? NFCS is not like more like a silo intervention. It has got a lot more value proposition if they do the job better, like what Anna Maria is talking about, the root causes of why it is not accelerating. So what do you think from the private sector investment should start in terms of those bottlenecks? Because there is someone have to lend the financial support.
Yeah, so I think we now need 2 hours to answer this question because it's really a complicated thing. But let me try to break it down into 1 or 2 minutes. So I completely agree what Maria said. We really should understand, again, the basic of economics. Why should someone give money? An investor just gives money when there is growth potential. And we are not having here a challenge of growth potential. We are rather having a challenge of mitigation, a challenge of creating resilience that growth can happen. So we are really talking about the root causes. Therefore, we don't need money. So we need system change. And when we have this system change, not in a political sense, in an economic, socio-economic sense, when this system has changed, then we need to answer the question how to scale capital. And what do we do at capital markets? we exchange information in order to build expectation. And based on these expectation we have built, we decide whether we give money or not. And this is always lured by the return. If I don't see a return, why should I give my money? So this is really the basic principle. And then we have to discuss, what do we want to finance? What do we want to support? Is it a common? Is it a public good? Then we need maybe public money. Then we need maybe blended finance. If we think about a marine protected area, just to give another example. If this is a growth case, like a business, then we have to use a complete different tool. We have all these tools available, but we don't provide the information coordinated. We have too many acronyms. They are not talking to each other. It's not interoperable, the entire system. So we have not a prioritization, and it's not organized. And then we do not have institutions right now in place, or the knowledge of the institutions is not there, how to scale. Because we have, and this is perverse, too much money on this planet. The money is going just in the wrong direction, or in the direction where growth is already happening. And in order to enable also small scale farmer to grow further, we need institutions who bring the money in a channeled way to them. We have also finance structures like microfinance, etc. All good, but this won't solve our biggest problems. So 3 things. We need to solve the problems of the impact, that we can generate growth. In order to generate growth, we need information so that investors knowing for what they are giving their money. And this money must be given then for a return in a business case. If it's not return linked, then it's a public good. Then we need to find another financing structure. And lastly, we need to redesign the knowledge in our organizations, or even the institutions, to bring scale in the system.
Yeah, I think it looks very complex from the point of
Complex is good, complicated is a problem.
complicated. But do we have any specific example you have that you can say that this was the process we adopted, and now there is a country that is investing? Any such example you have?
Yeah, so we always need to differentiate between investing and financing. A bank is not investing, a bank is financing,
Yeah.
right? So this is really, it's important that we make this
Distinct.
difference. The capital market is investing, you for your pension, me for my pension, etc. This is investing. What we are now talking is financing. So, and one example is what we just have discussed and published is we signed a letter of intent with Honduras and Suriname to deliver high integrity carbon credits, or better to say ITMOs, in order to finance the stewards of the global commons on the local ground. And these can be farmers, right? So we need to manage also to a certain degree the forest. Point number 1. Point number 2, we did a 500 million debt for impact swap with Benin. And here we worked with Aditi together, which provided a guarantee structure, because all these projects do need constant liquidity. I agree with you on philanthropy, but philanthropy is just one step. If the guy, the woman who is the philanthropic person is dying, changing priorities, the money is gone. So we need a constant flow of liquidity in small projects, which we very likely can provide through guarantee structures. And this is what we have done with Aditi in the context of Benin. And then the third example is typical outcome bonds or KPI-linked bonds, etc. And lastly, the fourth example is microfinance. So we're also providing vehicle for microfinance.
Thank you. Let me now go to Dr. V.K. Singh from the Indian Council of Agriculture Research. You heard from the donor perspective, you heard from the bank perspective, but you cannot exclude the role of farmer, because Indian Council of Agriculture has to take care of the welfare of the farmers. So I know India has recently launched last year the National Framework for Climate Services, and IMD is a very robust organization. Now, how do you see this NFCS would be able to integrate in terms of better advisories, not just on farmers, but also linking with market, value chain? Where are we on that from the agriculture research point of view?
Yeah, in fact, India is a
You gotta
very
keep closer.
diverse country, and we all know that once diversity is more, then the opportunity is also more. And this kind of plan, which was already, in fact, it was in practice in collaboration with ICR and IMD. We have already a big network all across the country, and we are putting this agro advisory twice in a week throughout the year, and that bulletin goes to almost 4 crores of the farmers. There is one Meghdut app we got developed, and that reaches to farmer through that Meghdut app. But only the thing is that advisory is mainly confined to the climate, means particular precipitations and what kind of temperature variations is occurring. But I find that once we go for in a holistic way from crops, harvest, and further value chain and all those things, it will be more pragmatic way of thinking. And in this context, I would like to mention that in our NICRA program, we got started this climate resilient practices. It's not only confining to the crops, the harvest, post harvest, some cases the livestock management, their fodder management. When we have to go for drying the fodder, making silage or hay, and how to keep, what kind of protection is needed, shelter management. Those things, in fact, taking the consideration of IMD data, we do. Another example I would like to mention, the based on the agricultural research data, we have planned a countrywide network, and we have taken the information from district wise. We used to take individual district wise data, long term data we have for 30 years, some cases 40 years, more than 50 years also. So using the data and this IMD forecast is made somewhere in month of April, and after this IMD and SESCOP forecast, ICR analyze based on the research experiences on different crops, different districts, what sort of the agroecology exists, what crops are grown, and what sort of the real time or preparatory measures for drought management, or if it is going to be a flood situation, what sort of the preparatory preparations has to be done. So that sort of advisory we provide in month of May and June.
Yeah.
But we never go for detailing like post harvest value chain. So in that context, the institutions which working with a bigger network in the country, we have post harvest institute, we have institutions which see the storage and other things, and also the marketing, the produce quality and marketing. If we link together, that will be certainly going to benefit to
Okay.
the farmer.
Thank you. Thank you for elaborating that. Let me now go back to Anna Maria again. Um, I know your unit is specifically looking at gender equality and social inclusion. Now, how do you see that the climate services can really help them, the last mile, specifically in terms of youth, women? How do you think any specific example Gates have in terms of last mile connectivity on the value of climate services that is improving them in any way?
Yeah. So I think that climate services and climate information to make decisions can help a lot both men and women farmers and vulnerable populations in the ag sector. So I truly believe in the power of climate services. I'm a believer of climate services all the way into the production and use for decision-making processes. I think that we need to be careful, especially when we are linking these to digital tools, because there's a risk that we can increase the gap between men and women farmers because of access to technologies. And we have seen that many studies have documented the difference in terms of access to mobile phones between men and women farmers. So we need to acknowledge that, and we need to include that in the projects from the very beginning. So what we have been doing in our support to climate services, especially in Africa, is to from the very beginning understand what are the needs, especially of women farmers, women small scale producers. And these, there are simple things, many simple things. There are more complex things, but simple things in terms of, for instance, radio. In some countries in Africa, radio is the best way to reach women. And I know that in the context of ICRA, ILRI did a lot of studies in terms of understanding what were the best mechanism for providing the climate information and the agro advisories. And it's, for instance, with digital green, we are working also in our artificial intelligence agro advisories in terms of using videos when you have both men and women in the rooms. And it's, we have been emphasizing, because we have seen this in studies, that you need, for women to benefit from these technologies and innovations, you need to have men in the room as well. If you only have women, then it's not going to work. So we have been documenting this with Digital Green on how it has made a huge difference. So I think that, like, overall, it's from the very beginning of the thinking about the innovations, it's building them in a way that they are responding to all vulnerable populations, both men and women, and sometimes they need to be tailored so that these different populations can use them. And it's, I mean, it's as simple as you, at the end of the day, these people are clients, they are customers of this climate information.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure that you understand your client. You need to make sure that you know that this specific persona, and I learned that from Todd, all your persona thing, you need to understand the persona and you need to produce the innovation thinking about that persona. I think that that makes a huge difference in the work that the foundation is doing in relation to AI. It's not only thinking about the delivery, which we all know that is challenging for women farmers, but it's also in terms of the corpus. So how do we feed the LLM model so that they have information that addresses and that respond to the specificities of women small scale producers?
Yeah, I think hearing from you, it looks like in the some of the strategic plans that the countries are building NFCS, there is a clear role of having GESI in terms of not just differentiating men or women, but also the marginalized farmers, but also access to other type of farmers. And that strategic process have to be embedded very much into the whole planning process. Otherwise, we cannot see gender and social inclusion as a silo intervention. It has to be mainstreamed across the sectoral thinking. A fish farmer is different than a crop farmer. So we need to make sure they are all very inclusive in this whole process. Thank you for that. Let me go back again to Muller now. You gave an example of Honduras. Now, let's say the NFCS is available for a country like India. They will mainstream the constitutional process to have that NFCS has to be institutionalized at a country. But then there is a lot of microfinancing institution, irrigation equipment creators, climate smart agriculture. There is a role of local community organization investing in early warning. We have a huge mandate. So what kind of blended financial model we need to bring together? Because one side we need to increase the infrastructure, the other side we need to focus on resilience. So over to you.
Yeah, so I think before I can answer this, I need to explain how we, or I'm as an economist, would define resilience. So resilience is the capacity of society and economy, as well as of nature, to endure shocks. At the same time, it comes on top that resilient also means not just enduring shocks, also adapting to change. And in order to do both, enduring shocks, adapting to change, we need to mitigate, again, the problems. So India has to work on the problems which are having an impact on the ecosystem services which the Indian society needs in order to deliver the goods the societies are demanding. This is very important. And the climate services are one part, one layer of it, information, right? Decision making. And then India in general, and we did this with some other countries, need to develop a kind of green or sustainable finance framework. So to make sure that the capital market exactly understands for which purposes the proceeds are used. that the capital market sees also that in green means less potential risk because of the mitigation factor based on the information system. It's interesting for me. So these steps we need to take into account in the example of India, but also for others.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Let me now come back to Dr. VK Singh again. Um, we have been collaborating with an innovation of Sukha Rakshak AI, which is India's first AI model for drought management. So I'm promoting the work, what we are doing now. But the question to you is, how do you see all these things have to be accelerate that is benefiting the extension to the farmers, but end of the day that we can have this national process, the NFCS and many other, but we have to go to the bottom up institution to make sure the credits are being provided to the farmers timely by embedding this, some of this modern technology and tools are coming.
Yeah, in fact, what
Take it
you
closer.
suggest, yeah, whatever you are saying that is in fact need of power for Indian farming. To, in fact, government of India has already pushed a lot for digital agriculture and moving towards the AI use of AI and these tools. Uh, there are very, I think, huge scope you can have, provided the thing is the data set, whatever we have, if we can integrate in right perspective. What happen? We have data set. Those are with the researcher or some organizations, and the another development department. They have data set to whom we have to take it. If we come together, both the institutions come together and make a database, and once database get created, whatever the informations we are having, technologies we are having, and these tools, if you integrate along with that, it can be easily penetrate to the end user. I will put one example. IMD has given a task to achieve this this meteorological information to individual household by 2027. The slogan is हर हर मौसम घर घर मौसम, means individual house should have information on daily basis of about the climate weather, so accordingly they will plan. And we have tested in our climate resilient program across the country in 450 villages. There the, if you are putting the meteorological observations on a daily basis, the certainly the any kind of extremes, either climate is drought scheme or extremes, or cold extremes, or heat wave, cold wave, even hailstorm, that can be easily avoided. We can overcome that, and that's why government have given a task to ICR recently to make a newer guideline for drought management,
Okay.
hailstorm, heat wave, seeing the progress made so far and integrating it to digital platform. It will be really useful for to all the stakeholders, not
Yeah.
only farmers, the extension workers, development departments, policy makers, as well as their feedback to the researcher, and we can improve it, we can utilize the things in more right way and more effective
Yeah.
way.
Thank you. Before I pass it on to Rees now, uh, we want to hear one single step that our program director can learn in terms of taking forward a message. Now, what is one thing you can recommend something for Todd Rosentek, who has recently been appointed program director? So what is that we can learn from all of you? Over to you. Each one of you, just a very short bite.
So I already told this to Todd. So I think that he needs to really be bold, and do not be afraid of you know just going outside the box and go beyond what CCAPS did, go beyond what Climber did. Dream that you can really change something meaningful in terms of impact with the program. And I'm sure that you are going to be able to do it, but don't stop now. You need to dream.
So I just can give you my own action agenda, which is sewing on the button. Because sewing on the button, it takes 2 minutes. If you don't sew it on, it takes maybe 2 years until you sew it on, right? So
That's great.
action now.
I will say that for implementing these kind of programs, we should have a very clear idea about given a location. Like any diverse situation, same things cannot work. So we should have very specific approach for individual place or individual commodity or individual domain. So that will be more useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all the panel experts from Anna Maria to Muller to VK Singh. Let me pass it on to Todd. Listening to all the 3 points, how much taking forward message?
Well, that wasn't quite what I was expecting for the closing. So, I mean, the traditional closing would have been something closer to what we've learned is that we need hyper localization of in terms of whether or not it's the finance or whether or not it's reaching the farmers or whether or not it's the types of investments you're going to make. I mean, that's the main thing I learned from the session. The other thing that I think we should all take home from the session is don't debate Anna Maria. Thanks for coming.
Can we just come here one photo?